Double bind.
Double bind.
Double bind.
Double bind.
Double bind.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Double Bind. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Welcome to the state of being Black in the world. And I am your host, Springle, with my co-host, Twaz, in-house. And of course, we have some guest co-hosts, and this is a very big episode for me. This is something I've been waiting for a very long time. I have a varied group of guests here, all representing different aspects of the Afro diaspora around the world. I don't know if I pronounced that properly, but anyway, moving on. So right now we've got in-house with me, we've got Yann, originally from the Ivory Coast, now a New Yorker.
Yeah, everybody.
He has a lot of energy, as you can tell. We've got Kim from DC, our in-house historian. Very excited to have her here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kim.
Hello, everyone.
And then we have Rosemary from Sudan, originally from Sudan. She is now a resident of Canada. Thank you for joining us, Rosemary.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, let's be clear, this is Sudan, not South Sudan. So I know, because it's now two countries, which we'll discuss in a few minutes.
The North.
The North, yeah. Right. Winter is coming. And then, of course, we have not least, but definitely last here, we have Zoe, who is a second generation Grenadian Brit. Anyone who knows me well knows that I am Grenadian and I love my little country. So I have a strong affinity for her in that sense. And she is coming from London. Welcome, Zoe.
Hello. I wish I could fake a Grenadian accent, but I can't. So, hi.
we'll try. Well, you could just simply say Wago.
I can't even do that. But yeah, good afternoon.
WHAGO. That's it. Wago. All right, cool. And then we have Twaz. Of course, you guys are familiar with Twaz, my in-house agitator.
Wow. Is that my moniker now?
That's your intro?
Really?
Yeah, I'm just joking.
I'm not claiming that.
But thank you. All right. I'll take it back. Not.
Your in-house, provocative commentator. I'll take that as my moniker.
Provocateur.
Provocateur.
Yeah, we'll use the word provocateur. Yeah. I'll have Yann say that because I don't speak French.
Man, you tried to put me on the spot, brother. Wow.
Tu parles patois ou tu parlez-vous français? Yann.
Français, bien sûr.
Of course.
French.
No patois at all. But thank you guys for joining me. And I just want to start off with a conversation on our backgrounds briefly. I know we did touch on that at the preamble, but let's start with Rosemary. You are originally from Sudan, correct? Which is now, I guess you can say,
yes,
Northern Sudan. Can you just tell us a little bit about your memories growing up in Sudan? Like, what were some of the strongest memories that resonate with you?
Gosh, the culture was one. The food. I'm from the North, so there's a lot of Arabs. I came from an Arab background, but whenever we saw the Nubians, because we have some Nubians around, and I just love that. They would sell dried fruits, and that was just so much fun and richness for my brother and I. They would ride in a camel, and they would knock at each neighbor's door, and you would get these dried fruits of selections that you would want. We just loved it. It was just so much fun. But I love the neighboring part of just living side by side. So many different cultures. You've got religious backgrounds. You've got, of course, Muslims and Christians, and then just Nubians, and everybody just was melting together. And there was just openness. So I wanted to share that.
Mm-hmm. What was your religious background, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh yeah, I'm Roman Catholic.
Is that a minority in terms of religious denominations there in Sudan?
Yes.
Gotcha.
If I can give you a number, it would be 10%.
Oh, small. Because I know it's
small,
primarily Muslim, correct?
It is.
Gotcha. And then sort of animist religions. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then Orthodox is there as well.
Orthodox? I did not know that. Yeah, I I usually think of Ethiopia.
They call them Coptics.
Coptics, yeah. Gotcha. Yes. I usually think of Ethiopia when I think of Coptic. Gotcha. And Kim, you're originally from Greenville, South Carolina. You now live in DC. What is the biggest difference between DC and Greenville for you?
DC is really, it's an international hub
It's an international city, which is vastly different from how I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, which is known as the upstate. We're near about an hour from Asheville, North Carolina, about an hour from the capital city of Columbia, about an hour and a half from Charlotte, and about 2 hours from Atlanta. But Greenville, even today, is a very politically conservative city. It definitely voted red as far as politics is concerned, and very much black and white. I've come to, as I've, become an adult, and, you're connected with people that you grew up with through social media and other platforms, and you begin to see these other diasporic identities that were not identified growing up. You were either black or white, and then there were some, Latino and some other ethnic backgrounds in between, but everything was really focused on black and white culturally. There wasn't a big melting pot or diversity of individuals that you would see, which is much different than DC. Of course, there are people from all over the globe in DC.
Do you have a rough estimation of sort of the black population of Greenville?
If I had to guess about the estimate, because I don't know, because I feel so far removed. I don't know how things have changed, but I will say, just for the entire county, maybe about 30%. I could be way off, but another piece about my upbringing is that my spaces were very black culturally. Church, even school at some phases as well. Socialization was very much entrenched in the black community, if you will, neighborhood, school, church.
Sounds like a lot of us.
Yes.
Got you. Zoe, you and I share Grenada in common. And of course, in my introduction to you, you spoke on a strong love for Grenada. You're even considering a move to Grenada. I'm just curious, being that you are a Brit, second generation Brit, what did you find so appealing about Grenada that you have such a strong affinity despite being British born?
That's a funny question. So as a kid and a teenager, I hated the fact that my parents are from Grenada, which I know I shouldn't say. You're putting it in.
Why?
It was just, I just didn't want to be from there. I wanted to be
just not cool?
It was not cool in the slightest. I wanted to be from somewhere where people knew where it was, for a start.
Nigeria, Jamaica.
I wanted to be from Brazil. Isn't that weird? Yeah. Something really tropical and just different. And so completely opposite to Kim. I grew up, aside from going to church once a week, and my family, pretty much every other space I was in was white. And that was from the age of 3 to 23, I would say. So yeah, it's quite a different experience. And in a way, my love for Grenada came a lot later on. So in my early 20s, I had no interest in the Caribbean. I never went there on holiday. I was living in Europe. I traveled around Europe. So yeah, it wasn't until my late 20s that reconnecting to my roots and exploring island life and my culture, that just became really appealing. So yeah, it's been a roundabout path.
Interesting. In terms of the white spaces you grew up in, were you comfortable, or did you ever feel like an other per se?
I think it was all I ever knew. I feel quite comfortable. For example, my secondary school, there were 1,100 girls and there were 11 black kids. So I have 8 years to adjust to being in those spaces. And to be honest, from nursery, primary, I was always a minority. So yeah, I'm pretty cool in white spaces.
Gotcha. So Yann, you said you went to France first before coming to the US. Can you share with us why France, or how'd you end up going to France?
Because Ivory Coast was a French colony before. So most of the parents in that part of Africa, wanted to send the kids for a better life in France, Europe. For them to go to school over there and then come and then change the country if possible. So that's how I ended up over there, because my parents want me to have a better future. And they didn't know what was about to happen or anything like that, but it was just a French colony. So for them, it just makes sense to ship us over there. So we didn't have no say. You know what I'm saying? To me, I would have loved to stay where I was born at. But, at 5 years old, you don't decide anything.
Right.
So I head up over there and grew up over there until I was 18. And I went back for the first time in the country that I was born. That's how I ended up in France, Paris.
Gotcha. And how was your experience in Paris in comparison to, say, living in New York now?
Oh, man. Socially, it's different.
How so?
Because over there, you got free Medicare, you got a lot of help for the government. It's a slow life. People working from Monday to Friday. Slow moving compared to the US. And is more livable. But business-wise, job-wise, is a little bit difficult.
Is it in terms of your job opportunities, does your race play a factor in any of that or no?
It does play a factor on it, but the country is like that. There's not too much jobs. You can go to good school, though. You can go to school a lot.
Gotcha.
But you can end up in school until you're 50 or 60 and end up with anything. You know what I'm saying? If you want to walk and then do something different, you have to change countries. A lot of people go to London, Germany, or come to the States. But in France, like living, you can live peacefully, anything like that. There won't be no extra. There won't be no adventure. It's very slow moving life. It's a beautiful country to visit and then eat, drink coffee all day long and stuff like that. But if you want to be successful and walk, you need to change. So the experience was for me, everything that I was doing was referred to the States. I love basketball. I love soul music. I love hip hop. everything that I was doing was compared to the States. Over there, everybody likes soccer, and I was like the devil because how can I love basketball so much and I grew up over there? So it didn't make no sense. So
I love that. So Mr. Twaz, my friend of many years, you and I have been on a previous episode talking about repatriation, and we had my friend Kay from Charlotte on, and you both were of the same mindset in terms of moving to another country, because again, we discussed in that previous episode repatriation because of the social climate, the economic climate, and the racism and things that we have to deal with here in the US. You were of the mindset, where would you go? More or less, this is your country. Why would you want to leave that? I'm just curious, is there anything that would change your mindset or change your mind in terms of leaving the US, or is that kind of like a dead solid for you? Would you ever consider leaving the US for another country? And if so, where? And if not, why?
Have joking that if I was ever on the run or, needed to be, the government wanted to imprison me, I would go to Africa, West Africa somewhere and go underground there. And I still feel that way. So yeah, West Africa, Ivory Coast, d'Ivoire. I'll definitely be up there. Senegal. I will definitely be up there hiding out in the bush. Okay, all right. They have no extradition treaty with the U.S. Okay, I would definitely be there.
So you've done your research then? I have.
Oh
wow. Okay. That's a little different from the previous stance you had.
Well, my previous stance was it was framed in the context of where would you go to be safe during a pandemic.
Right.
I don't necessarily know if I'm traveling somewhere to escape a virus, I don't know if going to a third world country is always the best idea, or not a developing country is the best idea.
I'm glad that you cleaned that up, because you know how I feel about that third world designation.
I apologize for that.
That's fine. You'll be all right. Your experience growing up, what was and you could be blunt, there's no insults. We just want pure honesty here. What was your viewpoint of sort of continental African people or Caribbean people when you were growing up? Like, how did you see them?
Growing up in Jersey, we have in certain parts of Newark, New Jersey, or the Newark, New Jersey area, there's a large population of Haitian Americans. And I didn't experience it, but I know there's a lot of beef between a lot of the African Americans and the Haitian Americans. And it was a lot of nasty thing, kind of derogative statements towards, Caribbean people from the African Americans. I never really...
Things like what?
just derogative, coconut, African booty scratchers, all the ignorant stuff that come out of niggas' mouth. You know how it goes. And, and to counter that, a lot of the, I guess, Haitians or West Indians would counter with whatever they would call us. And I guess a lot of African Americans, even especially in New York, have a whole problem with African cab drivers. So there is this divide, but me personally, I didn't really have enough experience or exposure to West Indians myself firsthand to really develop an opinion in my youth growing up. I didn't really haven't known any West Indians until I came to New York in my young adulthood.
Twaz, when growing up here, right, and in school, did you encounter a lot of friends that was from a different country besides the United States?
We did actually have an African girl that came out. Her name escapes me. She came in, I think, in elementary school, and she had dark skin. And I don't know, the 80s, and even the 90s, it was a tough time for us in the hood, and there was a lot of self-hate, a lot of negative energy and, debasement that we put on ourselves by calling each other, putting each other down. She got made fun of, not outwardly too much. Looking back on
it wasn't that many.
It was one African girl in our class. She was only there for maybe half the year, maybe. I don't know what her situation was, but she definitely was, not looked upon as quote unquote cool.
She was othered. Yeah.
Othered, yeah. Very much othered. Yes. The accent, we all got made fun of in the 80s and 90s, no matter where you're from. Let them find out you're from Africa, you're going to get it 10 times as hard.
Twaz, I totally agree with you on that. Yeah. I mean, I was in elementary school when I came to Canada, and it was always did you swing on trees? Were you like Tarzan? What were your wardrobes like? Right. Did you wear leaves? I'm like, we have a city. What the fuck is going on? Like, we have running water. Like,
right.
What is this? I was so confused, but I didn't know English, so I couldn't compound the English words to just say what I wanted. At that time, it was just like, you privileged piece of shit. And that's when I didn't know how to swear. Okay, so no, I didn't know how to swear yet.
But you worked on that.
That took some time. But there was a lot of that. That was tough.
Yeah, those memories. Zoe, really quickly, because it's funny because you and I talked about me and kind of sitting in the middle of the fence culturally and whatnot, with being very Americanized but still very connected to Grenada. So when you said you didn't want to be Grenadian, you want to be Brazilian, that kind of brought to mind my personal experience. Like when I was growing up in the hood I hate using that word, in the inner city of Brooklyn. The only thing you can be if you were from a Caribbean island was Jamaican. And I got into a lot of fights, and I'm assuming, and I know the Jamaicans and the Nigerians and the Congolese kind of run the black London per se. So was it kind of similar? Like when people found out like this is your background, that you kind of lost some cool points? Was it similar for you?
Not really, because I was around a bunch of white people. So do you know what I mean?
But later on, when you kind of moved away from that, and people. Not so much?
No, it wasn't. No, I mean, I think generally people will be like, oh, you're from Jamaica. I'm like, no, I'm from another island. Like, what? There's more than one island in the Caribbean. I'm like, yes. But yeah, no, I never. I think growing up, I think it's interesting, and it'd be interesting to find out what it's been like for Yann growing up in Paris. But in the UK, in the 80s and 90s, it was definitely that the West Indians, they were the dominant Black culture. Whereas as things have progressed, now it's primarily West Africans who are kind of in politics and entertainment. Right. So now all the West Indian kids who are like, yeah, I'm like super proud to be like West Indian. They're now kind of like, oh, actually you've kind of got more cachet if you're West African. So there's definitely been a shift. So that's one thing that I've noticed. But yeah, I never wanted to be Jamaican. No offense to the Jamaicans.
We can offend them. They run things all over the damn
world. So many of them, right?
Exactly. They're like rice. So Kim, in DC, there is a significant Eastern African population, primarily Horn of Africa. Do you find, and I know you love that type of food, you and I both enjoyed it together and separately. Yes. Do you find, I personally find, this might be offensive to some of them, but I find here in Atlanta, the most of them, they'd be in sort of, most of them, you'd find them working, if not operating and owning gas stations. And I find that there is this sense of otherness that they impart unto us.
Absolutely.
Us, the descendants of West African. Is that something you've sensed in DC as well?
I've seen it. Absolutely. It's so funny because I love my Abasha. Shout out to Abasha on 9th Street. Yes. I shouldn't tell you all my secrets, but it's the best. If you're in DC, yes. If you want good Ethiopian food, 9th Street, Abasha. Delicious. But I'll tell you, my experience with Ethiopian people in Washington, DC is not always positive. They do seem to kind of, not really connect with other Africans. Like they're, not even Eritreans either, that's a whole nother thing, but very much kind of, especially thinking about the club scene. I haven't been on the club scene in a while, but, going out and hanging out, like you would see Ethiopian women would get upset if Ethiopian men were talking to Black women, who were other than Ethiopian, things of that nature. So definitely there is some tension there that I've noticed. I haven't thought about it in a while. This conversation is very interesting because I'm thinking hard about, my upbringing and people I came into contact with, and even coming to DC, which has been over 20 years, about 20 years now when I first started living in DC. But that, what you speak of, is definitely there. I remember discussions about it with other friends about receiving sort of kind of negative contact with other Ethiopians in the city, but not everyone, of course. And now it seems even funny speaking about it now because as I mentioned, how great this restaurant is. I frequent there all the time, so the people are like family. So I haven't even thought about this for years. So I don't know where that really particularly comes from. Again, it makes me think about being out in the clubs and some of the friction that would come with that sort of kind of, people hanging out trying to holler at this girl or, that guy, and there being some kind of tension there.
Rosemary, I'm just going to add you in really quickly because your region is sort of east central, and I know tribalism has a lot to do with Horn of Africans or is that a word? Horn of Africans is the way that they view other people, because I know tribalism is deeply entrenched in Eastern Africa or even in Western Africa in certain countries. Is that something that you are familiar with coming from Sudan, or is it maybe not as prominent as, say, Somalia and Ethiopia and whatnot?
Yeah, it might be not as predominant because I come from a lot of the Arab side, African. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes I try to figure out where do I land on that scale. Am I African or am I just Arab born in Africa? Like my mom had to give birth, so it happened to be in the continent. Like what continent of? So I'd say no. I'm sorry, no, not vast. But I could tell you that the African part of where we're from, like it's very, the Caribbean part was non-existent. Like maybe I was too young to kind of really go that far. I mean, I knew Bob Marley. I'm like, Bob Marley, Jamaica, cool, right? Okay. But it was,
here we go with Jamaica again.
One love, whatever. I'm like, I like that song. Yeah. So that was exactly, that was it. That was all I knew. So when I coming here and I'm like, my dad's like, the blacks are not really black here, I'm like, what that?
So what does that mean? What did he mean by that?
Well, because it's just
in your interpretation.
I think you know what, I gotta ask him maybe just fully. Just answering for him now. But because we were we saw the Nubians, we were with the Africans. I think that he didn't really relate to the Caribbean. We didn't live amongst them, we barely saw Chinese. I mean, and I'm talking, this is the 80s, right? So just really bear with me. So you come to Canada and you're like, oh, what are all these people doing here? And then I'm like, what is patois? And I would be in high school being asked to translate what someone is saying. I'm like, I can barely speak English. Fucking no, it was very difficult. So, and it was automatic because in Africa I was viewed as white because it was so light. And I'm like, my parents people thought my parents stole me as a child. They would ask, "Who's this? You sure this is your daughter?" And then I come here, and then I'm labeled a Black girl. So I was like so confused as well, you know, the culture wise. I'm like, so I'm Black now? Okay, what? And like, but I don't know what. But I know I'm African. Like, I'm not denying that. So there was a bit of a missing gaps for me in that way. But I finally figured out. I had a chat with my dad.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, with you being, it sounds like you're lighter than your parents. Is that it? In that sense?
Yeah, I'm like my mother, but my dad's much darker.
Darker. Got you.
Let me jump in and ask a question to Rosemary.
Sure.
Rosemary.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm here.
What you just say right now, as of right now, how do you feel inside you? How do you feel? Who do you think you are right now when everything, like, we all go up on different countries and stuff like that, but inside yourself, how do you feel? Do you feel like what? As a what?
So right now I identify as Arab African, and I'm very proud of it. I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I couldn't distinguish, like, so I'm African, but then I speak Arabic, and I relate more to the Arab culture because I'm fully embedded in that. Right. So I'm Arab African. So.
Love that.
I think that's really interesting.
Rosemary,
jumping in.
Oh, Zoe, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just think it's really interesting how people navigate that label of Blackness, because if you come from a country where it's not really that relevant, and then you land somewhere where you're supposed to kind of identify with this sort of like blanket statement, it's really interesting how Rosemary, you've gone through that, and actually what you identify isn't one label, it's kind of more specific to your origins and your experience.
Oh my gosh, I so agree, Zoe, because the relation was so different from the country where you're from.
Right.
They don't care. They want to know your ethics more than what the hell you are. You know? Do you have time to sit to have a tea? Like, that's, anyway.
I was going to say, Rosemary, really quickly. So over here in the New World, as I call it, for example, the Hispanic/Latino identifier, to me, it correlates with Arab, because you can find people who I would consider phenotype-wise Black. There are a lot of Sudanese people I look at and I'm like, you're Black, but you're Arabicized. So would you agree, is it more than just sort of actual bloodline and phenotype? It's more of a cultural identity versus an actual...
Absolutely.
You know, like
Absolutely. It's the wholesome upbringing. It comes from the food that you've tasted I mean, I swam in the Nile. I swam it. I can say that as a child, I lived 10 minutes from the Nile, and I swam there. So it's a different, definitely it's the whole, the wholeness of it, that you are actually a part of it. 100% African. Anyway, that's my opinion. Moving on. Sorry, guys. Thank you.
So Yann, this is going to get a little deeper into this. It might get a little more, bit more uncomfortable, but
Bring the soup. Bring it.
This man has so much energy. I've worked with this man multiple times. I swear to God, we'd be there either on set or working events, and I'd be tired. It just 20 minutes of speaking to Yann, your energy, like he's like Energizer Bunny. Goes right back.
Love the people, man. Love people.
So, in terms of white people / Caucasian people, when you were younger, like, what were your ideas of white people then versus now? Like, in terms of what you were taught, were they seen as people that had superior intelligence? Eurocentric cultures were something we should attain to, like, kind of imitate the things they do? Or did you have more of a stronger cultural background within your community where you grew up in Ivory Coast that you didn't really need to kind of look to them? Or did they strongly influence how you saw yourself when you were younger?
No, the race thing came to me when I was a little bit older, like I say 15, 16, because when African people was bringing their kids to Europe, right, you end up in the poor area. So it's like segregation, you know what I'm saying? We don't know better. We young, we all see each other, like East Africa and West Africa, South Africa, we all in the same area. Housing, like you would call here, the project.
You in the hood now, baby.
So there's no, we don't think about it at that age. You know what I'm saying? When we go to school in France, everybody's mixed. That's why I was asking Twaz when he was going to school, was he mixed? Because in Europe, we all together when we go to school. We live in different area, but we all go to school together, the white, the Chinese, everybody in the same school. So we know everybody and we don't worry about it. But as we get older, then the rest thing come in. And also, this is going to be a little bit tricky. We used to get problem with the mixed kids. Like the father is white, the mom is black. It used to be like a competition between the mixed kid and the darker side. You understand what I'm saying? There was like a type of jealousy, like they wanted to be totally black. You know, you have to accept that you mix. You both sides.
But there was a desire for the mixed kids to be totally black.
Oh, they did not.
Is that what you're saying?
It was like a big competition between the mixed kids and the dark kids.
Right.
Like the folks that was totally like from both parents black, then the white and the black. They wanted to be like that, but they also have privilege, like the dark kid didn't have. But they wanted both sides, but they couldn't have it because most of the time, the white people in France, they didn't want to recognize those mixed kids either. This is how it was when I was growing up. So I'm trying to explain the big picture here. What was the problem? If you talk to me about racism, this is what we're facing. And we also have problem. Africans, black, have also problems with the people from East Africa, the Arabic, the Tunisian, the Algerian, which is considered over there in Europe like the Spanish in America.
Oh, wow.
You understand?
Gotcha.
Right. So how can I put it together? It was complicated. And more you grow, more you see that, we know together. But the oppressor is the white guy, because when you start getting older, that's when you start seeing that in the job market, it's very complicated because they want to put the white first and then you come second. Or you can do like the small job like security guard or cleaning and stuff like that. This is what our parents was doing over there. They couldn't do anything better than that. It doesn't matter which type of education that you have. You know, you got to be on that level. And the people from East Africa, they was also on the same thing. But could never understand what was the animosity between us, darker skin, against the mix or the
complicated at best, I should say.
It's something about the darker people that was a big problem, like they have, but they couldn't express it. You know what I'm saying, like that. So it was through violence, to insult and stuff like that. You know, but it was good living over there. But you know, that's if you talk about racism, this is what I see over there when I was growing up over there.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you, Zoe. How do you identify your kids and how do they see themselves, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I identify my kids as black or mixed race. Mm-hmm. How do they identify themselves? I mean, to be honest, it's a little bit problematic not to shock my own kids. But they're young, so I think they're still working things out for themselves. My son will say that he's brown, which to me, I don't think cuts it. We're going to have to work on that quite so long. My daughters, I don't know how they define themselves, but I know that when we go to the park, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's my mum, she's black. So I know that, I mean, we don't look anything alike, to be honest. So I think for them, it's less a kind of cultural values, anything driven thing. It's literally just like the skin color is different. But yeah, it's complicated. I mean, for me, I see my kids as black. I want them to identify politically as black in terms of where their allegiances are culturally, politically, socially. But I am also aware that in some ways they've got privilege because of their lighter skin color. I feel my job as a mother is to make sure that they can use that to the advantage of Black people. But yeah, at the same time, I do realize that they're going to be othered. Like, in a way, like the most racism, like out-and-out racism I've experienced is in Grenada with my kids.
Oh, wow.
And their dad at the time, like, kind of being, called stuff that really is not okay. So as a Black woman, I think sometimes Black men have issues with Black women who don't date Black men. But yeah.
Maybe 10, 15 years ago, I'd probably be one of those men you're talking about, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's weird. It's so, I mean, I get it. I mean, I now I'm involved and my choices have changed. But Black men don't get that when they're with the white women in Grenada. And yes, for like my 4-year-old to hear stuff that just really was not okay, to like walk into shops and people are like, oh, is that the master's child? You know, like, and that was like the stuff that I can say. But I mean, I get it. You know, white people have a legacy. They in some way inherit that privilege, and yeah, they're going to have to negotiate it. But in looking to move to Grenada, I'm aware that I'm going to have more conversations with my kids about like race and racism and everything else they would do if they were in London. But that's a result of history, I guess.
So Kim, you and I had a conversation briefly about a situation that happened when you were younger with a kid that you thought was your friend, who kind of turned around and insulted you. After that scenario, did that affect your viewpoint of Caucasians or not?
Not really. I think in a way, so just so everyone is clear, it was a situation, I think I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, and there was, my last name is Springle. This person's last name is in the S, so I won't call out who it is. But we were nearby. He might be listening to this podcast, but either way, it doesn't matter. But we were always lined up together. We were like the same height at the time and all of that. And it was a white boy in the class. And so we were always, I considered us to be, friends in the classroom. And something happened. I don't even know what the context was, but he referenced something about my lips being big. And to me, I don't know. And it could have been, how things kind of change over time. I don't think it was like malicious, if you will. It could have been out of curiosity. I don't know if I try to psychoanalyze it now. But I remember at the time it was hurtful because it seemed to just come from left field. Like, why is, he insulting me? But to answer your question, not really. So I talked about kind of how I was socialized in Black spaces, and that was mostly church. And I'll still say school changed. When I was in kindergarten and 1st grade, I was at a predominantly Black school. And then my parents sent me to another elementary school that was predominantly white. And there were always situations where I felt that I was being treated unfairly because I was Black. That was clear to me at the time. I mean, I know specific examples where like this white kid, we were passing out like music books or something from music class. You could take your turn to do that. And that was like a sign of leadership or being a good student. And so I raised my hand to pass out the books. And this white boy said, she's done it before. And the teacher didn't ask me a single question and just was like, gave him, reprimanded me and then thanked him for being honest. And I was like, what, what is going on here? So things like that would happen, like particularly music class again. Like I took piano lessons as a kid and the teacher would always highlight students who took lessons and would play, and I was never asked. Things like that. Also during elementary school age, we had neighbors that were white, a couple doors down, and they attended a church. And my older brother was good friends with one of the kids. I mean, they were close. And so he would go often to like Vacation Bible School or something, but he was comfortable in the space. And I remember my mom would send me also. And again, I felt very othered. The kids would crowd around me and say, I like her because of her glasses, or I like her because of her hair. It was just, so I remember like having a fit about not wanting to go there, like literally like having like a breakdown about going there, like seriously. So so it was interesting, though I might have been in class in elementary school with mostly white kids, white teachers, still I had friends who were Black that I may have been friends with in other spaces. But that particular comment that he made to me, I don't think really changed how I felt about white people. There were other interactions that made me feel less comfortable than, other spaces I was in.
So Twaz, when you came down to Philly, when I was working in Philly 2 years ago, was it last year? I don't remember, but I got to 2019, so last year. So I kind of got to hang out with you.
Almost 2 years ago.
I got to hang out with you and your school friends, and I've never told you this, but I can say this is kind of uncomfortable, but let me just say this. I kind of got to see elements of you and kind of what helped to shape you and your viewpoints? Because you and I have strong differing viewpoints on race and sort of interaction and segregation and things like that. And you did tell me that these were people you went to school, boarding school, was it? I think, is that what you told me?
That's correct.
Yeah. So your boarding school, was it primarily white, or was it a fair mix of different ethnic groups?
It was a diverse, but primarily majority wise white.
I guess, bluntly put, did you have any issues kind of navigating the same space as a predominantly white institution, or was there enough Black people for you to kind of congregate with, or you didn't have an issue with any type of race per se?
Like I said earlier, after leaving an elementary school environment where that was predominantly African American and they were like cutthroat with each other and everyone else, every other, to go to a place that was predominantly white, but it was a mixed and diverse, and not have that, any navigation that's not the cutthroat I left, it was bearable. If you know what I mean. I'm keeping it real.
You got out the hood, baby. Oh, wow. That's interesting. So it actually felt more safer and more comfortable.
Exactly. Definitely felt like definitely a safer space. And I mean, you were there. I mean, what did you, even you meeting some of my schoolmates, that were Caucasian, what did you feel? Did it feel like a safe space to you?
It did because it was thankfully wasn't a large group. Not that I'm uncomfortable being around white people, obviously where I work, and like I'm on a team of 120 plus people. It changes year to year. And the majority, only about 25% of us are Black. But one of the things I love about what I do work-wise, there is such a wide group, like almost every ethnic group and every race is represented. And I love the fact that we're forced to commune, because people really start to wake people up in terms of, like, I'll be blunt. One of my coworkers had told me when she was younger, where she grew up, deep South, and Kim, I'm sure you'll be familiar with this. She said, if we were at the water fountain and I drank before her, she would not drink after me because she thought we were dirty. Me and this person were really cool. In fact, so cool that we could have had that conversation. She said all of that changed when she went to college, and then she started seeing Black people in a different light. So that changed for her. So for me, it's not fully, I'm not uncomfortable in white spaces, to be blunt. I'm not fully uncomfortable. It's just that if I am the only one who's Black, then I'm uncomfortable, because I feel like sometimes you become this sort of thing of interest, a conversation piece. Rosemary, you know what I'm talking about? When you're the one different person in that room.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say my uncomfortable my uncomfortable space was when I was with predominantly Black, around predominantly Black, because I didn't know how to fit in to that. I could talk about culture. The most like I would bring it back to high school, and I didn't hang around my own kind. And when I say my own kind, you're like, what the hell is that? You don't even know what you are. Okay, well, it was mainly, I would say, the Arab speaking, because that was my comfort zone, right? I didn't know English yet. Let me hang around with the Arabs. I decided not to, because I really wanted to learn the English. And if I hung around my, same speaking and language speaking, I won't excel. I decided not to. And I became friends with others. But yeah, my uncomfortable space was in a space of Black. There were a lot of new kids coming in. I remember there was one girl, Keisha, and she came in, Shakila, I can't remember her name, moving on. She came in from Jamaica, and we related so much because we had the same upbringing and school systems, I remember when she stood up the first time when she had to answer a question, and everybody, of course, laughs. Who's standing up? Who stands up here? You don't do that here, And we had a lot of connection and understanding of where we are. And I understood her transition because I've already gone through that in grade school. But yeah, I couldn't fully be myself. I didn't even know how to be myself. I mean, now that I'm of age to say that I've experienced and I have a bit of comfort and wisdom within myself, I can show up very differently than I was at a younger age. If I was in a room, I would be silent, I would be quiet. Yeah.
What's the word? In terms of connection, across the diaspora, those from the continent, those from the Caribbean, and those of us who live in like North America, Europe, and whatnot. What are ways do we think we can, or what techniques or modes can we use to foster a more stronger connection with people of other cultures? And I'm speaking specifically non-Caucasian, because I think the Caucasian culture is just global, and most people, I feel most people kind of try to attain to that standard and barometer, but non-Caucasian people, it's like, how can we connect with others? Like, what ways do we feel that we can use, or techniques we can use to connect or create a sense of connectivity across cultures and languages and things like that?
How can we connect? For me, it's about travel. We can't do that now, but for me, it's about just exploring. Like my master's specialism was in African government and politics. And that was because I just really wanted to devote my mind to understanding the context which my ancestors came from. But what I found was that all of the books that I was reading were written by white men. So even that in itself wasn't enough to like fully enable me to kind of get my head and my heart around what that experience is like. So for me, what I did was travel. Like, I've only been to Gambia, but it was just like the most beautiful, like liberating, free experience I've ever had in my life. Like, I felt freer walking around places in the Gambia than I do in Grenada. Because in Grenada, in Grenada, as soon as I walk down the street, people are like, hey, English. Like, I haven't even opened my frigging mouth, and they know that I'm not from there. Whereas in the Gambia, people just knew that I was from the continent, and they would say salam alaikum to me, and I would have to respond back. And they would frown because I was wearing shorts, because they just figured that I was like, I should have been dressed like a good Muslim girl. And it was just so beautiful. That thing of just being there, being on the land, like sitting around drinking green tea around a fire. I think that's the way that you just connect on a heart level. So yeah, for me, it's about travel, spending time in African countries. It's also about returning to Grenada, which is just a place that I'm hugely passionate about, and a community where I feel that I can really make a difference. So yeah, it's about just forging those connections on a really human level with people that matter to me, because my people matter.
Right. Anyone else? Yann?
I can have a different approach, but I agree with most of what she say. I agree on the part, like, to art, to what we're doing, communication, and also educating the youngsters, because we're not going to lie. We have problems in communication is going to be the key, because a lot of us don't like all of us. The Black and stuff like that, we have problems with ourselves, like denigrated each other, jealousy, and it starts from the government. You see what's happening in Africa right now, like dictatorship and the government taking everything for themselves, and they forget about their own people. We can put ourselves in a position to talk to the younger generation. Like, listen, we need to group economics, how to move as one. Like, okay, you this way, or if I do something like this, you'll be jealous. You wanna cut me down. The perfect example. Neil, you remember when we did the commercial for Adidas?
Mm-hmm.
Right. There was a African guy over there, right? That started trouble.
Yes.
But remember, previously we were on set with a white producer. When we were over there, it was quiet. It was foreign direction. You understand? So now something that we do on our own, he want to direct.
Yeah, he was the one. He was Senegalese, and he thought he was a superstar. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, Mr. Kaki. Yeah. Have any one of you seen that movie Dolomite that Eddie Murphy did?
Oh my gosh, that's so old. Yes.
Yeah. So Wesley Snipes' character he was a Senegalese version of the Wesley Snipes character in that movie. Exactly. So this is what I'm telling you. We need to fix the problem within first.
How we do that? To add to communication, a loud communication. I will even say that we leave that to the women because they're better at it. They can bring peace, communication, and let's see if we can move as one unit.
Thank you. Kim?
I think, I'm thinking about you're saying how we can become better connected, like across the diaspora and places. I think understanding those cultural connections and history, I have to go back to history and being open to understanding as well. I go back to, I think my roots in South Carolina have a lot to do with, my long desire to visit the African continent. Again, I was planning to go to Senegal, y'all gonna hear this, in June. And I have everything was paid for, everything. I was ready to go. And then of course, COVID derailed that. I call it a divine delay. I'm going at some point. When I was, I think, in Charleston, I went to the College of Charleston down in Charleston, South Carolina. So I grew up in the upstate in Greenville, but we really weren't connected to like the Gullah culture of Charleston. It's very rich. And I remember being exposed to this documentary that is called Family Across the Sea. Yann, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's about people who were brought from the Ivory Coast into the Charleston region. And I remember being mind blown about the cultural traditions that were still being practiced.
Right.
Things like lullabies that people were singing. This was like in the 1980s when this documentary was done, were the same lullabies that were that were sung in Africa, in the Ivory Coast.
Yeah.
So again, that goes beyond, everything, like as far as like Black American existence is like, we're here because of slavery. Like our existence goes beyond slavery. That's a short time period. So I think, I'll say that history and understanding and drawing those connections, culture. And I'm going to say, because I love to eat food.
I was already there, aspect.
Kim. Yeah. So Rosemary, I'll pass that to you. But food, all of that I think is so, like, since I've been here in Greenville, I was driving somewhere else and I saw a little store on the side. It was an African and Jamaican grocery store, which was never here when I grew up. So of course I made a U-turn and stopped, and I was able to come back. I made some agusi for my family, and my niece comes in my parents' home, and she's like, "What's that smell? What is that you're making?" And she is a kind of a picky eater, and I told her what it was, and she went for it first, and I introduced her. It's probably the first time she'd ever had a West African dish. I'm sorry, I probably disappointed her because I'm not. You know what I'm saying? It's not part of my culture. I learned to make it, but I think food is a big piece as well to connect us.
Absolutely. And if she came in and said, "What's that smell?" it would have been a different conversation. Right. I was like, "What's that smell? Oh, what's that?" All right. No, thanks. I was in the same thought as yourself, Kim. Just the idea of, you don't have to understand the culture because you're not in it, but you could taste it. Just taste it.
Yes.
I've always felt that people are so rigid with what they eat. It makes their senses so limited. So, just opening up a little bit of senses, it opens up more. So you may not ever relate to someone who's, I don't know, Ethiopian, but you're like, I tried your food and it's delicious. And it's a conversational piece. How beautiful is that? That's how we can engage in that way. And I thought about this question, Neil, when you gave me the list. I got the cheat sheet, guys. That's right. And I was like, what's this guy saying? How can we connect? I'm like, God, I live with my parents. Isn't it enough? Anyway. So I thought, you know what? Through this medium is already a connection. What you're doing is already a medium of connection for us to relate. And if I want to throw something back at you, Neil, I have a challenge for you. I want you to get on the same topic with different age groups. And I'm talking if you can get them young, just to see the dynamic of their thought process and get them engaged into that. Even older, I would say pick older. Hey, your grandpa's still around? Can you get him on Zoom? And it's going to be difficult, but can you get your grandpa on Zoom? I know both mine are gone. Oh, yeah. But that was my piece that I wanted to add for you, is to try to maybe get the young ones in and kind of just do a dynamic of that chat to see what it's going to be like.
Gotcha. Thank you. Twaz, from the American standpoint, what can we as African Americans do possibly to kind of connect or foster a tighter connection with the diaspora?
I think Rosemary and the group just, kind of hit the nail on the head with using food as a cross-cultural bridge. I think that's a pragmatic and culinary fun way to connect peoples through the taste buds. She made a good point. Generation-wise, I think the new generation has the most potential to be open-minded. To make a long story short, last week, because of COVID, I basically had a mini Thanksgiving dinner with my grandmother and my sister. Us three, had a Thanksgiving dinner where we kind of got her favorite restaurant and brought some vegan food for her. She didn't want to taste any of the vegan. First of all, she said she didn't like it. We said, well, have you tried it? She said, no, I don't like it. And I said, but you haven't tried it. So
I love it. Just opinions. People just only have opinions.
I don't like it.
No idea.
Of opinions. And it's like, and she had no interest in trying it. And so that to me exemplifies, metaphorically, like what mentally where people are a certain mindset of a lot of African Americans in this country, and I think if they ate more foods, it would open up their minds at an earlier age.
But thank you guys. Oh my God, I love this conversation. We're not going to go any longer. You guys are not going to have me editing for 12 hours. So yeah. But thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Twaz. Again, Yann. And do not forget to tune in next week for another discussion on the state of Blackness globally. This was Double Bind, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in next week. And of course, follow us on multiple streaming platforms. Deuces.